We know your time is valuable.
That's why we've created processes to keep your job running smooth.
We know you expect 5-star service.
That's why we're committed to delivering 7-star.
We know it's your home and your choice.
That's why we provide options and let you choose the right solution for your home. Experience the LCS way with LCS Heating and Cooling at lcsheatingandcooling.com.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.
It's June, which means we're almost already halfway through 2026. I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standridge. What are we expecting this June, though? Overall, it's a big month for us because finally on summer break for a lot of families. We have the summer solstice coming up. Summer officially starts later this month on the 21st. Technically, we have meteorological summer that has already started. So what are we expecting? You can probably guess warmer weather, more humidity, and some storm chances, and you'd be spot on. But I do want to give you a little bit of nuance to some of the forecasts and the outlook on, let's get some numbers to a few of those things and maybe highlight something you didn't know. But first, as always, let's start your outlook for June 2026 with the daylight change. Now, June is interesting because we gain at a slower pace till June 21st, the solstice, and then we start losing some daylight. So you gain some, you lose some. So in Indiana specifically, we gain about 16 minutes of daylight, but we lose 8 at the back end. So you get this net gain of 8. That's why you don't really have a color. Everyone has a net gain of a couple minutes. Now, our northern states have a gain of 10 minutes. So really throughout the month of June, you're probably not going to notice a big difference on changes for sunrises and sunsets. Here in Indiana, the sun is rising early in the 6 o'clock hour for Eastern time, and it sunsets just after 9 o'clock. So you put that all together, I mean, we're at 14 and a half hours of day and less of night. You know, we are getting into our longest days and shortest nights of the year. So a lot of daylight. These are your longest days of the year. Now, for a 24-hour solar day, that doesn't ever change. But daylight, we are at the max right now. Now, speaking of nighttime, we still, of course, get dark hours. We're not up towards northern Alaska, northern Canada, where the sun never sets. It does set here, so we can at least see the full moon just a little bit. Here at the end of May, we actually had another moon, a second moon for the month of May. That was that blue moon. So that pushes back when we get our full moon in June. It's at the end of the month, really the 29th into the 30th. We call it the strawberry moon. This is the time of year when strawberries have ripened and we're picking them up. In fact, we've had several strawberry festivals already, and they continue to be the case throughout the month of June. Now, in some places, strawberry season's already kind of wrapping up. Everyone has something a little bit different. Every farm is a little bit different depending on what the weather has been. But it is the strawberry moon. There are a lot of different moon names for the month of June. You get the blooming moon. Of course, even more flowers are blooming. The green corn moon, that's a good one here in Indiana because those corn stalks a lot of times are at least about a foot high, and they say knee high by 4th of July, but I tell you what, it's taller than knee high by 4th of July. It'd be knee high here in the middle of June, but it's also the birth moon, a lot of animals being born, hatching moon. You probably had a bird's nest somewhere, maybe on the back patio somewhere, some baby birds hatching out there, and the honeymoon too. So strawberry moon, we'll wait till the end of June. I'm really going to give you kind of a hodgepodge mix of some stuff for the month of June, and then I'll show you the outlook. I want to kind of paint what June is like here in Indiana. It's a big firefly or lightning bug month. We call them lightning bugs. The West Coast calls them fireflies. I will say, though, we have way more lightning bugs than they do. So I think we have probably preference when it comes to what they're called. Fireflies, lightning bugs, they're all the same thing. They love humidity. They love warmth. So in the month of June, we usually get peak season. But usually, for a lot of times, it's kind of the first week to 2 or 3 weeks. Lightning bugs are interesting. There's several different species of them. We actually had our first pop-up in March. Those species, though, are already dead. we're getting other waves of species of lightning bugs now, kind of the biggest wave. So we're in peak lightning bug mode. If you want to see more lightning bugs, there are a few things that you can do. Number one, cut your grass a little bit taller. You can also turn off unnecessary lights that are outside, because when they're lightning up, they're trying to mate, right? And they're connecting with other lightning bugs of the same species. So there's a specific pattern, and so they can recognize that pattern. And when there's a big bright light on the back patio that you may not necessarily need, of course there's security lights that you may want to still have on, but the more light there is, it does make it a little bit tougher. You also had a water feature. If there's any place you can keep the grass unmowed, and I know that's not realistic for a lot of folks in a subdivision or things like that, but there are a few things you can do, reduce pesticide use, but we have seen a lot of lightning bug numbers go down, especially as habitat gets taken over or grass gets really cut short. If you can leave the grass a little bit taller, they can actually hide in there during the day. And then at night they can go around and fly around, and it's a magical thing to see. Now during the day, we've got a big bright light in the sky called the sun, and it at its peak in the month of June. It peaks for its solar noon at the middle of the month. 74 degrees in the sky. That's 74 degrees. We got your protractor out from the horizon. So it's at its highest angle. In Indiana, it's actually never directly above our heads. It's always at least at an angle, because we're in the northern hemisphere, or we're up the ways on the globe. Now, if you were closer to the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer and the equator, at some point here, you would be getting it directly above your head. But we never get directly above our head. But it is super high. Because it's super high, we do have a higher sunburn threat. It's a faster time to get a sunburn. UV index is at its highest here in June. It's still pretty high though in July and August as well. Now notice how it's still higher in July than it is in May. The reason why we have this is because we typically have more clouds in May. And when you have more clouds, it does help reduce the UV index. Although remember, you can still get a sunburn when it is cloudy. It may just take a little bit longer, but it can happen. So we give you the UV index, today is a 10. What does that mean? Well, there's a lot of the fancy stuff with it for calculations, but really what we need to know is how quickly you're going to sunburn, and how fast and how drastic will the sunburn be, right? So we are now ranging 20 to 15 minutes, maybe down to 10 minutes for that sunburn time here in Indiana for the month of June. So make sure you got that sunscreen ready to go and get the hat ready too, especially for the little ones. All right, I had this last month, but I wanted to show you where we're headed. April into May, we make that big switch. We actually have more sunny days than cloudy days. You probably already noticed most of the days are now sunny. And there are some wet days and there are stormy days and some cloudy days, but we do have a lot more sun this time of year. Here in the month of June, we range between 55 to 60% of our days are sunny or mostly sunny. So most of the time, we've got a good forecast for you, but we do have to watch out for some scattered storms, because as temperatures heat up, you can still pop them up. We're talking about temperatures, average highs starting around the upper 70s. The start of the month, by the end of the month, our average high is in the mid 80s here in Indianapolis. So more and more 80s will be likely. This is something interesting. You may not realize June is actually our wettest month. A lot of times in June, we start to pull back the rainfall a little bit when you think of how many days are wet. Here's the interesting part about June. The humidity starts getting higher. The temperatures are hotter. The atmosphere actually gets taller. You can squeeze more water in some of these clouds. So when it rains, it pours in the month of June typically. We don't usually just get misty showers every once in a while in June. We get some good downpours and some decent thunderstorms. After the month of June though, we really watch our rainfall chances dip down. But we are still in our wettest time of the year, and we peak here in June in central Indiana. So it's really important that we get some rainfall. And at this point, the crops are getting a little bit taller. So if you do start to flood a little bit, hopefully the stalks are okay on the beans and the corn. But I tell you what, we don't want too much water too at one point. So we don't need flooding, but we still need to keep the soil wet as our crops are growing. And we've done an okay job this year, especially Indianapolis points south and points east. North of Indy, this map doesn't do maybe the best justice to how we're starting the month of June. leaving May, we actually were kind of near or even slightly below average for some of our northwestern counties. It's definitely drier up towards Lafayette and Logansport and Monticello compared to Point South. Now, this is at the start of June, so hopefully this may change. Hopefully we can get a little bit more rainfall for some of our northwestern counties and keep a good rain south of Indianapolis too. You know, if we got 1 inch to 1.25 inches every week, we'd be set. That would be perfection for us, and we wouldn't have to worry about a drought. But I will say, I know I'm kind of picking at strings here just a little bit. Overall, Indiana is doing a lot better than most states when it comes to the drought, but we could definitely use a little bit more water for our northern counties. One more thing I want to show you, and then let's get into the forecast, shall we? Tornado count. This is interesting. Where tornadoes typically hit changes by the month of June. All year so far, most of the activity, typically southern plains, the deep south, and parts of the Midwest. The deep south starts to quiet down. In fact, rotation in the atmosphere goes away. They get a lot of thunderstorms, but they don't really spin as much. They keep on spinning, though, farther to the north, and our northern plains really start to wake up in the month of June and into July, and a lot of hailstones are created, but also tornadoes. Here in Indiana, on average, you get 4 or 5 tornadoes in the month of June. What was interesting is last month, May, we didn't get a single touchdown in the state of Indiana, not even a single tornado warning. The last time we didn't have a May tornado was back in 2021. So it actually has happened every once in a while. I'd say about every 6, 7, 8 years or so, on average, we'll get a May without a tornado. In fact, it's happened a handful of times since the year 2000. So it does happen. Now, what's weird, though, is the next question you probably have is, okay, if May's quiet, what about June? We have noticed that for the month of June, if May was super quiet, let's say no tornado whatsoever, we did see at least a good handful of tornadoes in June, sometimes a lot of tornadoes in June. So the question is, do we make up for it? That's kind of a little bit tough to say, but maybe a little bit. June typically brings some activity if May was quiet. We rarely have had both a May and June both be quiet. So we'll have to watch this June and maybe a little bit into early July too. But your weather team is fully prepared. We're keeping a close eye. May was a good break for us. Yeah, we had a lot of rainfall, but we had a good break from tornadoes. So we'll see how June goes. What about June 2026? So before I show you kind of the outlook, remember we talked about 70s going to 80s and a good amount of rainfall, 5 inches on average. Okay, so what about this month? We are expecting a slightly warmer than average overall month for June. Now, there will be some days that are cooler, and it really depends on when it's raining, right? Remember how days in the summer you can get it up to 85, and then all of a sudden a good downpour comes in and cools you off. So that gets tricky with the forecast. It was still a hot day, but you were able to cool off too. I think overall we do have some warmer, more humid air. May was cooler. I think we're going to make up for it a little bit more in June. Rainfall-wise, there's not honestly a great signal. Climate Prediction Center kind of expecting maybe slightly drier than normal conditions in parts of the Great Lakes, but there's really not a great signal. I would say overall, expect a pretty average June 2026. However, I would be on the lookout for some more severe weather. I don't think we're done yet, especially since May was quiet. Now, remember we talked about quiet Mays have led to some active Junes. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the forecast this year, but it's definitely a possibility. That's what we've always kind of seen in the past 20 years. Doesn't mean it actually will happen again, but that's where we have that baseline. So I would be on the lookout for some more severe weather. Severe weather season is not done. Usually, even if May's quiet, we can still get tornadoes, of course, in the month of June. So we'll keep a close eye, but I expect more warmth and more humidity. Summer is arriving, and we're expecting that typical summer weather right here in Indiana.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.